Hi, welcome back to Ozark Garden Talk with White River Nursery. I'm Sarah.
I'm Charity.
And I'm Alex.
And we're recording this in early December, and it's actually snowing outside, which is fun. But the leaves have dropped, and the perennials are asleep, and everything's just a little quiet in the landscape. So we're here to argue that just because it's quiet outside does not mean it has to be boring. And we're bringing you our favorite winter interest plants, things that really add that fourth season of something to look at this time of year. So did you guys have a list of things that you brought?
I've got all kinds of stuff, but I've always been guilty of this. Every winter, I look around and I think to myself, I should have planted more evergreen stuff, more things with winter interest.
Yeah.
You know, it's something we kind of forget about when we get all excited in the spring and through the summer. We're looking at all the flowering things, and sometimes they kind of get left behind. But I mean, adding some evergreen bones to the garden, some of the broadleaf evergreens,
It really helps.
It does. Personally, I love hollies.
Yeah.
I mean, most hollies are super tough. They provide a fantastic screen. They provide kind of an architectural, almost like you can use them as a backdrop and kind of a wall to create a good outdoor room scenario. And I mean, the birds love them.
Yes.
Hollies are definitely one of my favorites.
Yes, and there's pretty much one of any size you could need.
That's true.
So there are the shrub form, the tree form, the fat tree form. It's like a very, very large shrub. Things like Nellie R. Stevens are some of our best sellers here, just because they tend to be so hardy. That is definitely one of the hollies that I remember after our week of -20, the February 21,
I think that's
when we
when
had
it was.
the week of the -20 across the country.
Winter
but
vortex.
yes, I remember that following spring, several customers reporting that newish to older established Nellie R. Stevens hollies didn't look great, but they came back from that pretty well.
Right. And
So that's one of my favorites because of
That's
that.
impressive.
Yeah.
I mean, because we lost so many plants that year. So
yeah, I mean, there's a reason you see Nellie R. Stevens in the historic district that are, 50, 60, 70 years old and are huge. It is worth mentioning, I mean, not all hollies are created equal. There are quite a few hollies that are pretty popular in this area that are zone 7.
Yes.
And when we get those negative temperatures, they can really get burnt up. And we saw that during that -20. So.
And even some of those zone 7s came back.
Yeah.
But they also didn't.
They took a beating.
Definitely was hard on them. And, actually, we eliminated a couple of plants based on that year.
Yep.
Just because they were zone 7, we'd carried them for many, many years.
and they'd done fine
And
for
they'd
many,
done
many
fine.
years. Yeah.
But after that, it was pretty hard to get them to come back strongly. And so one of those would be the silverberry, which isn't really a holly,
Right.
but it is an evergreen, and it is a unique evergreen, and it's a plant I love.
it's a nice contrast.
It is. It has that silverish coating to the leaf.
And they smell amazing.
They bloom in the fall and smell amazing. So here we are selling this plant that we don't have. But if you're in the River Valley, you're probably fine. And I have literally helped customers from Fort Smith area get those to go home and plant from us. So there's still appropriate areas that are close to us for some of those plants. But Nellie R. Stevens, and then the American holly, which is our native holly, which gets very large over time. One thing to remember with hollies is what their mature size is, and don't necessarily fit the foundation planting plant.
Right.
Because
Bigger
they can
ones,
eat your house in about 20 years, but still. The pollinators love hollies too. in the spring when they start, spring to summer when they start blooming.
Yeah,
they smell so good.
They're
too.
one of the earliest bloomers, and
Yeah.
so when they start opening up here at the nursery, the big Nellies and things like that, I mean, they're like a city of bees,
Yeah.
of just honeybees and all kinds of pollinators because they don't have much else to feed on.
Yeah.
So when they
And
wake up on those early spring warm days, they go straight to them.
And you just walk by like our hollies in the on the shrub pad, and
You can hear 'em.
They're
smell
all
them
over,
too.
yeah.
I mean, they're just really nice fragrance. The flowers are so tiny, we don't necessarily see them.
Yeah,
to
they're not-
notice them as a floriferous plant, but. Some of the other hollies, though, that don't say evergreen, would be the deciduous hollies, the Ilex verticillata, or the Ilex decidua.
Yes.
Ilex verticillata is, we refer to it as a winter berry here on our labeling. That is a common name for it. There might be, I'm sure there's others. The nice thing about Ilex verticillata is that a lot of those have been paired male to female by name, by
Right.
cultivar name, based on when they bloom. And they all are going to bloom within the same kind of period, but a little bit earlier, a little bit later, you know, within the bloom season. So we have things like berry poppins, which is a female to be cross-pollinated by Mr. Poppins, and these are a little bit smaller, but some of the older varieties on the market are Southern Gentleman,
Yeah.
the male, and Winter Red, the female, and those are going to be like 8 foot tall, so they can be structural in the garden, but they lose their leaves in the winter.
Yeah, they're so pretty.
They really show off those berries.
The berries
I
are
mean,
the highlight in the winter for those. So
And I see those out in the woods around here.
Yes.
I saw some out around the lake last winter. They're beautiful.
So I personally have not figured out how you tell the difference, like in the winter, between Ilex verticillata and Ilex decidua. Ilex decidua is possum haw, which I think you had on your
Yeah,
list.
I did.
Yeah. And so possum haw does tend to get bigger. And there's not a lot of cultivars on the possum haw
No,
specifically.
we don't see that anyway. We
Right.
just see the.
And the possum haw is also a viburnum, common name viburnum. So there we go with the common name thing.
I did not know that.
Yes. I'm going to lose it. But anyway, one of the viburnums is often labeled possum haw. So sometimes it can be
gosh.
confusing online or even in person.
Yeah.
But what all did you have about possum haw?
Well, I was looking, and just the comparison between the winterberry holly and the possum haw is just their cultural requirements. The winterberry can take a lot wetter of soil and kind of wants a lot wetter of soil, and the possum haw can take a lot drier conditions. And I see them a lot just in even just fence rows that have been unmaintained or whatever, which are just pretty, you know. But
so that makes me wonder, like when I spot the red berries in the winter, I don't know which is which, but I wonder if it's more often
I think it's more the-
decidua instead of verticillata.
I think it's
Maybe
deciduous.
especially we could eliminate that with a field versus
Right.
a
Right.
riverbank.
Yes, I
maybe
think that's
how you
probably
could, figure that out. One of the things about possum haws too, because there's not a ton of cultivars that are named, it is hard to get sexed possum haws.
Yeah.
So you don't know if it's male or female, and you literally have to wait for it to bloom and make a berry or not. So the thing with possum haws that we bought, and we're getting some this next spring.
There's supposedly some way to tell while they're in flower. If you pull out the magnifying
have to wait
glass,
for a flower.
yeah, and
Yes.
count the petals on this tiny little off-white bloom, and
And-
I've never actually done it.
No,
So
and it's also, I mean, I did that with spice bush this summer.
Did you?
This spring here we had we had several that bloomed early on, and so I tried that. I mean, I tried
How'd it
to
go?
figure out. Oh my gosh, no! I tried to macro some photos and then observe it over several days here. I was also like, please, no one buy this. I'm trying to watch it, and I could never determine that. And it's also one of those things I think you need comparison, and even online pictures, which are great. There's some really good ways to do that, but So I don't think I could do possum haw any better than I could do spice bush.
We're going to have to get an AI kind of detector to figure it out.
I think there are enough naturally occurring. So you've got, you know,
Right.
genetic bank out in the world around
In the
us.
wild, yeah.
And then also just plant a bunch.
Right.
Yeah.
There you go.
That's
how
the
you do
plan.
it.
Yeah, I love the possum haw winter berries.
Yeah.
There's a beautiful one in front of the West Fork Library that I pass every day, and
nice.
it's kind of, it seems like it has almost a more of a orange tint to it. I've seen, you know, we've had the golden ones here, the golden berried ones, and the red berried ones. But do you know if we've had there's one that has a little bit more of a
Not that I know of.
cooler tint to it. I don't know. It's really pretty.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Back on evergreens, one of the ones, I mean, I think this is kind of ordinary, but in my mostly shade yard, I really appreciate having a little bit of evergreen. And the one thing that has just done fantastic, which I've tried several evergreen.
Haven't we all?
Yeah, just to add a little structure. They're just nice to add, just like you said, that something in the winter that's big and juicy. And I have a Hicks yew in my back, and it is so lush and full and just soft. It's just a nice soft texture.
Yeah.
I really appreciate that plant just for having some structure there, and it is a big. It takes trimming really easily. I used it in a lot of evergreen pots that we did here at the nursery.
Yeah, it was
and
pretty.
Yeah. It's something I really appreciate in my yard.
Like you said, I mean, lush is kind of, you know, for winter, you've got that dark green. They look nice and healthy and shiny and juicy. And
it doesn't seem like they get burned at all, and they take the really cold temperatures. They're tough.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, that's kind of worth mentioning. Like, Northwest Arkansas is not really the land of evergreens. We don't have a ton that naturally occur here. I mean, we've got some shortleaf pines, eastern red cedar, but there's just not, and the hollies, but there's not a ton of stuff that naturally grows here. So, you know, fortunately, there's a lot of stuff that is deciduous that is also beautiful in the winter. I see on your list over there you have sycamore.
I love the sycamore.
I do too.
Yeah.
You know, when you see those stark white branches and the white trunk against that dark, gloomy sky, I mean, sometimes they just glow in the winter.
They're such a landmark too. I mean, you can just see them from such a distance. Of course, you don't want to have them. They're not a neighborhood tree because they're huge. 60 to 100 feet. I mean,
They
grow pretty quickly.
And
they do.
They jump up quick.
And they have kind of an irregular growth habit, which seems to lend itself to some breakage during storms. I mean,
Maybe. I haven't seen much of it in the areas where I know they're at.
I mean,
they drop the little seed balls.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, you know, just I feel like they're a good, if you have quite a bit of room to keep them away from your foundation or any kind of structure.
True story. When I first started working here over 10 years ago and I lived right down the road, I almost bought one to plant in the backyard.
In that tiny yard.
We're on a quarter-acre lot, you know, and I was like, but I love them. And
Yes.
fortunately, I thought better of it, so it would currently be looming over the top of that house.
Yeah.
Like you said, they're fast.
They do tend to grow. They pop up in ravines and, you know, where there is moisture. So they definitely, that's their natural spot. But they can be put out in the middle of, you know, an open lawn if it's large, like you mentioned.
Right.
The white that we're talking about is on more mature branching and leaves. So the bark on sycamores does tend to peel off in like paper type, stiff paper type pieces. And it isn't until they get quite a bit taller and the diameter of the branches are large just when it's so beautiful.
Right. So at a nursery, when you're buying even a relatively large specimen like a 15-gallon, you don't really see that beautiful white. I mean, it takes a while.
It does. I don't know how old it needs to be.
You know, I passed, just coming in this morning, I passed one that was probably 20 foot tall, so it was a fairly young one, and it was just starting to have some white show up on it. So I was like, oh, that is the sycamore, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
just starting even
Yeah.
at that big of a tree. So it takes a while.
I think another tree that has that reminds me of river birch with the peeling bark.
Perfect.
And that's another tree that I am not a fan of next to the house.
Yeah.
It's very sticky. Little twigs
Yes.
fall off, so it's
Yeah.
it's kind of messy. And I have more than once been in conversation with customers about how they didn't like the tree, and they are sometimes used by developers as a flower bed tree.
Yeah.
In new subdivisions, they'll pop in a river birch, a knockout rose, nandina, boxwood, and but they're right next to the house. If a river birch is given its room, it can be so ornamental with that peeling bark. The twigs drop maybe not in your flower bed covering. That's been
In
the
your
complaint.
gutters.
Yeah,
Yes.
gutters, flower beds. So
Yeah.
give it room to be further out and kind of a centerpiece maybe. But the peeling bark, probably on sycamore too, but I don't know that as well. The river birch and other trees are great, what's the word, caches for our wintering birds.
Oh,
They
yeah.
poke seeds into the bark and hide it for, saving it. That's their
Yeah.
little storage pantry.
Oh,
So chickadees, I think, are use the river birches a lot.
That's awesome.
Which chickadees are some of the cutest birds we have. So if you have room, plant a river birch so that you can have chickadees.
I visited a house once, and they had a couple of clump river birch in the front flanking the driveway, and they had it lit.
Oh,
From
yeah.
below.
That would
Oh,
be
I bet
very
that's-
pretty.
And at night in the winter with that
Yeah.
exfoliating bark, I mean,
Yeah.
it
See, you
was-
got to find things to
they were
really appreciate in the
gorgeous.
winter, but
Yeah.
that's a way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Add a little lighting, and
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be boring.
Yeah.
Yeah, speaking of like just branching, that's so pretty. One of my favorites which I'm sure we all have this on our list, is the red twig dogwood.
Yep.
I mean, there's so many cultivars, but I have a couple. I have a yellow twig and a red twig, and my house is white, and it's such a, you don't even appreciate the plant in the summertime,
Right.
really. I mean, I think there are some cultivars that are a little bit more limey green and have a little bit more interest, but the ones I have are pretty boring in the summer, but they're one of the only things that really adds color to my landscape this time of year, and it's just they're really pretty. I do have to kind of be selective in pruning, pruning out the
Yes.
old branches to keep
Yes.
the vivid color, but they're really pretty.
I was going to bring that up. So, yeah, they have the best color when the stems are around 2 years old.
Yeah.
And then after that, they start getting more woody and kind
Yes.
of dull. And
They
so
do.
you do have to go in and selectively remove that oldest growth periodically.
Yeah.
But man, a red twig dogwood in the snow,
Oh, they're
Yeah.
so pretty.
or yellow twig dogwoods with a nice dark green Nellie R. Stevens background.
Yeah.
Yep.
Or use.
Yeah, or
Yeah.
use
Any of the-
and
yeah.
really get that pop of color.
Yeah.
And you're not beholden to a flower. That's one of the
Right.
things I
Yeah.
love about these colored stems, the exfoliating bark. I mean, it's just kind of there. And another one would be the coral bark Japanese
Yeah,
maples.
that was on my list.
Yes.
I was going to say
Yeah.
the coral
And,
barks.
those are interesting, and I think red twigs kind of do this too, but the stems aren't as colorful until the leaves drop, and then the sun directly hits the stems, and it really colors them up.
I was thinking wasn't it a daylight hour
Maybe
triggering?
so. Maybe so.
Shorter daylight starts to redden the stems.
I was reading about red twigs in particular. They said the color improves after some cold weather. And I was thinking the coral bark maples, it seems to be more of a light exposure thing, because you see that even before they drop their leaves in
Yeah.
parts of the tree that are more exposed, you get much better color.
Okay.
So
I don't know. I thought I had researched the change on the coral barks, but I don't recall what,
I mean-
what
We've
the
looked up
trigger
so many
is.
things.
Yeah, but the most common coral bark we carry is Sango kaku. Is that right? And it's about a 15 to 20 foot tree, so it's considered small. It does appreciate some shade
Yeah.
in our heat, but it can take half day of sun because it is short. and just I've had a conversation over the last few days with someone regarding power lines.
Oh,
You know, planting around and under power lines, and
Yep.
not that I would expose a beautiful coral bark maple to the potential of a power company, but it would classify as a smaller tree to plant under a power line area if you needed to. But
They're always so careful and perfect with their pruning of the trees.
yeah, I know. That's why I'm on the no spray list, and they have to call me before they can do anything. But it is. We have one that's been in for a couple of years, and the benefits of the coral bark is, of course, it's a cool maple leaf.
Yeah, it's
Japanese
pretty.
maple type leaf.
Yeah, most of the year.
Yes, but it's fall color hits with the branches, the fall leaves, and the branches are starting to turn, and then you still keep going into winter with it's amazing.
That's an awesome when you can get something that's just it's pretty
Keeps
year
going,
round.
yeah. Yeah.
Rare too.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, there's not very many things that are pretty all year round, but yeah, you can appreciate the branching structure and everything in
Yeah.
it. But
I think another evergreen that we haven't talked about a lot and can be a good or bad native is the eastern red cedar.
I love them.
I love them too. They are not very nice to our apple trees because of the co-sharing, like we mentioned on our last podcast, of cedar apple rust. But that is one of the prettiest trees in the snow in our part of the world.
Yeah.
Like snowfall on a cedar is just amazing to me. Also, the juniper berries.
yes.
And just lost its name, the bird.
Cedar waxwing.
Thank you. The cedar waxwing, which is also an amazingly beautiful bird to watch, descend upon the eastern red cedars to feed.
Yeah.
And they
It's
are just
beautiful.
tough as nails. I mean,
Oh, you
anybody who has driven on the interstate in this part of the world, you see them on these just like clay gravel hillsides.
Yep.
Nobody's watering that thing, and they're just like a perfect form.
Yes.
You know,
And why do they look so perfect on the interstate? It
don't
drives me
know.
Because they
crazy.
have a lot of space around them.
Yeah.
They do.
As opposed to the field, the seedlings that pop up in an old hayfield that are growing so close together.
Yeah.
And they can get sparse, definitely. They can shade out their lower branches in the wood setting, and then they're very, very scraggly. And
Oh yeah.
Just in general, when they're young, I mean, they have better form.
But I mean, I have some out in the woods behind me that are old, and there's nothing. I mean, there's big branch structure down low, but there's no greens because it's completely shaded itself out. But it's totally alive.
Well, have
Yeah.
you seen the ones up near the square? Oh, what's that? There's a historic building up there, kind of across from the Arcegas, Toast Arcegas. And they have some cedars up
Ozark
there.
Folkways is there now, right? Yeah.
Those cedars are probably over 100 years old.
Yeah.
And I mean, they are massive for an eastern red cedar. They don't get super huge. But the no branching at the bottom.
Yeah. But they do have cool bark, that papery, shreddy bark that can be very pretty too.
This might be a good time to bring up something I've always thought is funny. People love to plant pine trees all around their property as a screen, and it works fantastically well for about 5 years.
Yeah.
And then they drop all their lower branches, and you see this all the time around here.
Yeah.
You know, it's properties encircled. And
Like sometimes double lined.
right.
The double line of
the
it's
pine
beautiful.
trees.
It's cool.
It's
That's what my house is.
wonderful.
It's all. I think we have 48 pine trees surrounding our
my
house that were planted in the 60s. I still have a nice view out the backside of the house, even despite these big trees. But
And, you know, we're talking about all these evergreens and things that have interesting bark and branches and things like that. But there are things that flower in the winter, too. We carry, every winter, a big selection of hellebores.
love them. Linton Rose.
Everybody loves hellebores. Evergreen, deer won't touch them.
No.
And bloom in mid to late winter. I mean, the different varieties bloom at slightly different times.
February, March.
So you
is
can
the
have
strongest time.
You can have a dark green, perennial coming up through the snow, flowering.
Yeah, and this also rabbits. The deer rabbit do not like them.
Yeah.
Because they are toxic to them. They are about 18 to 20 something inches, so it's not a ground cover necessarily, but they do make a good tall ground cover because they'll colonize over time.
Right.
And so they can fill in and kind of just, especially a woodland, they are a shade perennial, so they cannot take full sun at all.
Right.
But they can become a nice low understory to a woodland garden.
It's kind of interesting. I mean, the older varieties, the old-fashioned ones, they spread relatively aggressively. And then they've created all these new cultivars, partially for different colors and, just more new variety, but also so that the blooms face up a little bit more, because the old-fashioned ones, they really do hang down like bells, which can make them a little harder to appreciate the bloom. But those old ones spread like crazy. The new ones don't seem to spread nearly as aggressively.
I think they will reseed too, as opposed to also like runner type spreading. But you don't know what the ceiling is. So until that gets mature enough to bloom, you're not going to know exactly who it is, or what color it's going to be.
That's kind of cool.
Because I think they
can
cross.
Cool,
yeah.
You could just have a big mixed,
right. The only thing is you let it grow for about 3-4 years to get that bloom, in the shade, and then it's like, oh, you're just a whatever white one, or just there are some that are kind of greenish white,
right?
Or as opposed to like some of the black ones.
There's so many interesting ones. Those kind of apricot-y with a little yellow to them. I mean, there's so many pretty
petals.
ones.
Yeah.
People love the black ones, and those are hard to find.
They are hard to get a hold of, and I mean, I love them too, just because of the novelty of the flower.
Right.
But
you don't see them.
I would also point out that you're usually planting them in the shade. So a dark flower in the shade with dark, deep evergreen leaves sometimes. So it's like you need one of all.
Yeah,
of
you
the
do.
colors.
There you go.
We see the collectors.
So,
people do collect all the different types.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm thinking of one person in particular.
And they don't have to. They're not like very needy plants. I mean,
They're
basically
drought tolerant.
Right.
They would prefer to have some nice, organic soil, but or organically amended. But they don't need a lot of fertilization. And again, with the shade, even though they're evergreen, they tend to handle not drying out. They're okay with going on the dry side. Versus some of our shade plants really love moisture. I find that often. It's like, oh, you need to be moist, and yeah, great.
It's hard. Then you can't plant them together.
Right, yeah.
Got to figure that all out.
Well, and speaking of, another tough, good winter perennial, coral bells, the heuchera, they don't flower in the winter, but they have so many different color variations of the foliage that they're just beautiful. I have had one of those over winter in a relatively small pot sitting on a table on the back patio. So, I mean, very cold tolerant. If it gets cold enough, like that -20 we were talking about, it is going to burn the foliage up.
Yeah.
But it will survive.
A lot of mine go dormant, and I have several varieties. I grow them well because they like it dry. So they don't always stay evergreen, but they do hold out a long time, and then they come up pretty quickly once the sun is out in the early spring. I think when I talk to customers, the coral bells or heuchera, failure is often in the soil being too moist.
Too wet.
I was going to say that
Too
has
wet.
been my problem. I think I get too much
rots.
runoff that it It keeps them a little bit too wet. They are sensitive to that.
Which, I mean, that's a problem with a lot of things here in the winter. We have kind of gray, muddy winters. And, you know, one thing we haven't talked about are grasses, which I know you want to talk about.
Yeah, I definitely have that on my list.
But that's the big problem with the grasses. I mean, sometimes people will come in and they're like, man, you know, it froze. And I'm like, probably not. It probably had crown rot. They can't stay too wet.
Yeah. Well, the grasses are beautiful structural things for the landscape all year. I mean, you know, when they're up. But the dried grasses, you know, it's one of those things when we talk about native plants and kind of adjusting our aesthetic to the idea that things are dormant or dead looking, but that in itself has its own beauty. So it doesn't have to have a flower or be evergreen to be beautiful and of purpose. So the grasses, a lot of the stems, and our native perennials too, have hollow stems to them. So you have beneficial insects overwintering in there. There's all the little seed tufts for all the overwintering songbirds. There's the nesting materials that they provide. So there is so much. They are all going to be some sort of golden brown.
But you get that movement,
Yes.
you know, in the wind, and you have something upright that's not just flat. And that's not, you know, not all grasses are created equal for winter interest. Some of them do flatten out pretty
Yes.
well, but a lot of the switch grasses,
They do well.
Yeah, they maintain that upright look instead of flopping.
Yeah.
And I've always thought they're beautiful. I mean,
I
just
do
having
too.
something vertical
Yeah.
in the garden that's not an evergreen is nice.
A lot of the little blue stems, if they grow in full sun, they will still stay fairly upright through the winter. So far, mine are still fairly young in my planting, so they tend to fall over sooner because they're just not a thick bunch yet for most of them. I have had a infiltration of broom sedge,
Yeah.
which is very beautiful, actually. I've left all of it, and I may regret that by next year.
Copper color.
But they are very strong, upright. They have the tufts, and somewhat remind me of a little blue stem, the way that the seeds come out along the stem. But that is actually what you see driving down the road right now, out in hayfields or, you know, roadside ditches. And it's so structural, and it's like one of those plants also, you know, all of this we're talking about, can any one of the plants we've listed so far, well, maybe not the sycamore, but could be used for winter decoration inside. Like, you know, arrangements. You mentioned the porch pots that you made here, but taking dried grass bunches doesn't just qualify for, you know, Halloween and Thanksgiving, because you can add in some of the winter berries and the red twigs and a few clippings of holly, and you've got like a gorgeous arrangement for inside the house.
Yeah. I added some grass pods to my mom's porch pot this year when I did hers.
Yeah.
So it was really pretty. Adds that contrast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I also love the broom sedge, and I feel like it, to some degree, falls into the same category with the eastern red cedar, in the sense that when I was growing up, I knew farmers that hated that stuff.
Oh,
Yeah.
And, you know, I feel like they have kind of a mixed reputation too, and it's the same thing. It's like, you know, back in the day, the eastern red cedars would grow in the fence rows because the birds would plant the seeds for everybody, and they hated it. The farmers had to deal with that. And the cattle don't really feed on the broom sedge, and it can spread to the exclusion
of the pasture grasses.
Yes, and so, but they're great ornamentally. They're, I mean,
and they host a lot of our wildlife,
and they're tough.
Yeah,
they're tough.
Yeah, you would probably, if you had a small space for them, you would probably really have to stay on the spread. But if you get them early, I did weed some of them early this spring, and it was not a problem. I mean, I just, you know.
They just pulled out pretty easily.
Pretty easy, yeah.
Well, I know you had mentioned plants that we were talking about, plants that like to stay wet, but one of the things that we have trouble with is just the freeze-thaw cycle this time of year, and just kind of keeping all of these things happy. I just wanted to kind of touch on maybe a few things that we kind of recommend people do to keep everything healthy and happy and make it through the winter, because it can be kind of hard. Like the -20 wasn't exceptional, but even just a typical winter, we'll go down to 0 at least a time or two.
Right. And I mean, and we deal with this here at the nursery, obviously. You know, we have tons of plants in pots, and one of the main well, 2 or 3 huge things. One is mulch, you know, just a healthy minimum 2-inch thick layer of mulch all around it. And it's not necessarily just to keep the soil warm, it's to moderate those temperature swings.
Right.
And you know, you mentioned that's a huge problem here in Northwest Arkansas. In both late fall and in early spring, we'll have a 70-degree day followed by a 17-degree night not long after that. And those temperature swings can cause plants to break dormancy, start pushing out tender new growth that will get burnt to a crisp. And mulch can actually help with that quite a bit. Also moderating soil moisture, of course. Mulch is always good year round, all the time.
Don't put it on the stems.
That's right.
Or the trunk.
No mulch volcanoes, please. I still get mad when I drive around and see that all over the place. I just feel like
going rogue sometimes and just going just pulling off the side of the road and just like taking it back off of there.
I think you should.
Especially when you see some of the people out on the job
that should know better.
I just feel like I should go educate.
Well, sometimes it's weird. I mean, I see that on like the University of Arkansas campus. Oh. And I mean, it's been a little while, but they had, it was bad too. And I don't get it. I mean, at this point,
they just told somebody to go out and mulch that had no idea.
Yeah.
They just dumped some.
Yeah. One of the other big things is if you're going into a really cold night, for instance, like if it's going to be 0, make sure your plants are not going into that bone dry.
Yes.
We need some water in the soil. We want the plants to have as much water in their tissue as they need going into that freeze, because a lot of times what happens, and this doesn't happen that frequently here, but if the top several inches of soil freeze, it basically makes that water unavailable to the roots and unavailable to the plant. So it has happened here before where, you know, the soil freezes, it's kind of windy, and it just desiccates those leaves. It's exactly the same as if it was the middle of the summer and you just didn't water your holly for weeks and you get that leaf burn. It's not the cold. It's the lack of moisture that is available to the plant.
Out of that,
So going into that, we want them to be as well supplied as possible.
Which is, you know, winter is when a lot of us decide to not go outside.
Right.
One of them too. But that's where it does pay off, especially for any evergreens that you do have planted, or the broadleaf hollies. Those things, you do actually need to pay attention to the weather for your plants, even in the winter, and try to water ahead. I mean, it doesn't mean that if you see that the weather's going to do that and you didn't know, you shouldn't water, you know, if you have a chance. But like if you can give a soaking watering a good 24 hours to 12 hours ahead, that's going to be better than not.
Their chances.
Yes. And again, you know, like we said, sometimes it's just kind of muddy and wet around here. So if it's like that, obviously don't worry about it.
Yeah.
You
if
know,
we've had some, or you've been able to water ahead.
Right.
Right. Doesn't have to be soaking wet. Also, don't do that to coral bales.
Right.
That's
true. You know, there are some things out there that you wouldn't. You wouldn't go do that to, because they would prefer to even in the cold to stay drier. But most of the evergreens are a safe bet. Just make sure they're watered.
And you know, I would say another thing that we talk to customers about a fair amount is not fertilizing too late in the season, or even, you know, some pruning can cause the same thing. Basically, what we don't want to do is force a bunch of new, fresh, tender growth right before it gets cold. You know, all that stuff, it needs to kind of go dormant, have time to harden off so that it can handle those cold temperatures. And you guys have seen it. Sometimes there'll be juicy new growth on the tips of a plant. We get that freeze and it just burns those tips.
Yeah.
It doesn't burn that older foliage, so we don't want to encourage that too much.
Yeah.
It's hardened off.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yeah.
One other thing I would say about winter on the kind of in line with the grass and stuff was, just trying to leave your garden for all the overwintering critters that you have out there. The more insects we have, the more birds we have, and the more other wildlife like frogs, turtles, so forth. Yeah. If you're a person that really needs things neat, if you cut down things, if you cut the stems off of your old black-eyed Susans, which I agree, they don't look great, just pile them in the area to the side or pick an area in your yard to just keep all that whole. Don't
make a
don't shred
mulch pile or something.
Don't shred it. Let the insects go ahead and overwinter and emerge. And what I've seen on that is you want it to be above 40 degrees. So it's fairly late in my mind because we have all this fresh growth in the spring and let's clean up, but sometimes we haven't really gotten to that temperature for the insects to actually get out of their winter hibernation or growing stages. So having a spot, either a portion of your garden is left standing and just call it the wildlife spot, or a space in the yard that's out of eyesight that everything just gets piled for.
I will say two things about that. One is in front of my house right now, I have tons of echinacea, black-eyed Susan, all that stuff still standing. It's right by the front door, and I love it when I walk out the door. They're little birds all running around in there.
That's another winter interest.
It's kind of it's cool, but also, honestly, leaving a lot of that up serves a little bit of the same purpose as mulch, in the sense that it kind of slows down that air movement and somewhat insulates that patch of ground. So from a plant health perspective, it's protecting that crown some.
Yep.
Valid point.
Yep. Yeah. I think that early on here, I can't remember what plant it was, but we pruned, cut back in the gallons. And this would be like under plastic, in a greenhouse. And the hollow stems collected the water and just held it there and froze and thawed, all winter.
It's like
and then
slow release waterer.
Slow release death of rot.
I was going to say it rotted.
I can't remember what the plant was. It was like, that shouldn't, just at least not as close to the ground or, whatever. Well, iris is one like that if it stays wet and has, it'll just start rotting on top of the ground with the moisture. Not that it has the holes, but some of those hollow stem things can just be straws for the water once you cut them and to go straight into the crown.
Well, the rot's a big problem for us, for sure.
Yeah.
But
it's always a strange winter when we actually have a dry winter.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And that's not really necessarily what we do too often.
No.
And when we do, we usually lose plants because nobody's aware that it's a dry
We're
winter.
We're not used to it.
Yeah,
we're not used to having to pull out the hose.
Right.
And take it back again.
Carry
take
the
it out
bucket
again.
out.
Yeah. Well, I think that's fun. Did you guys have anything else that you wanted to bring up? I think there's a lot to appreciate in the winter, and we could keep going, but But I think that was our top hits for the winter.
Definitely.
So, all right. Well, thank you guys for joining us. I appreciate it.
Thank you.